mint, but look into her eyes and watch the glint disappear when she discovers you're skint. It's all about the money, honey. Well, money can't buy health, I doubt it ever will. But nothing stops you being poor and ill. And the world's best doctors hand you a bill. It all comes down to money. It's cruel, it's tough, it's hard, it's rough. If you haven't got enough of the green stuff, and it's not fair, and it's not funny. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to money. But is that true when there's a price tag on anything you could want to do? You saw those richer are freer than you in this land of milk and honey. So it's one for the rich and one for the poor. If the poor have freedom, the rich have more. Have you thought about just who makes the laws? It all comes down to money. It's cruel, it's tough, it's harsh, it's rough. If you haven't got enough of the green stuff, and it's not fair. It's not funny, it all comes down to money. It all comes down to money. It all comes down to money.
It is the witching hour, and you're listening to Exe Files Paranormal Radio on Phonic FM 106.8 here in Exeter and www.phonic.fm online. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Alison Rockbrand, and I'm here with my co-host, Jonathan Diamond. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, and welcome to the stranger side of radio.
Jonathan is my guest co-host tonight. Our normal co-host, Richard Freeman, is far away in Tasmania hunting something strange. I'm not exactly sure what. What is he hunting,
I think
Jonathan?
It's he's on the trail of the Tasmanian tiger.
Ooh.
Which is supposedly extinct, although people keep finding evidence of it.
Okay.
Extinct, so.
Well, from what I understand, he's actually camping. I was thinking, I wasn't exactly sure what he was doing, but he's actually in the bush camping in Tasmania and eating canned food. I did ask him, what are you going to eat? Thinking maybe he was going to do hunting, and he said no, reading.
Or widgety grubs.
Yeah, canned soup, he said. So there he is, Richard. We're thinking of you. Don't get eaten by the tiger. That was music from our guest this evening, his band, a band that he's in. That is Here Be Dragons album, The Year of the Dragon, and that is the track It All Comes Down to Money. You can check out more of their stuff at their website, www.herebedragons.info, and that is music from our guest. Hello, Cliff, the Talesman Eastabrook, storyteller extraordinaire.
Good evening.
Good evening. We're going to have a little bit of news with Jonathan, and then we're going to talk to Cliff and hear some of his stories and so on and so forth. So take it away, Jonathan.
Okay, so first in a case that has a certain air of the Demeter arriving at Whitby, we have the story of a yacht which was found by fishermen off the coast of the Philippines. On board was the mummified body of German seafarer Manfred Fritz Borat, who had been sailing the oceans for 20 years but had not been seen since 2009. His mummified remains were found sat at the table on board his yacht. Police say that the cause of death at this time is unknown, as is exactly how long his boat had been drifting.
Yeah, I heard about the story. Very strange, very strange tale indeed. Of a yacht which had disappeared, I believe, and then has suddenly reappeared, and the mummified corpse.
Fascinating, the idea that the oceans, with all the technology that we have, you can still have a boat that goes missing.
And your mummified corpse is found clutching the wheel.
I mean, it literally does sound like the captain of the Demeter arriving at Whitby, lashed to the...
Very, very spooky.
Yes. Yes, and the second story...
How long was he gone?
Well, he was last seen...
7 years, I think.
He was last seen in 2009, so about 7 years. There'd been... Someone had claimed that they'd had contact with him by... over the internet or something, kind of about 3 or 4 years ago, but it's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the internet for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very strange story.
Yes, and second odd case of the week is research that's been done in the west of Africa, in Guyana, which has suggested that behaviour exhibited by certain groups of chimpanzees may amount to ritualistic behaviour. The chimps have been observed building cairns of stones around the bases of trees. Now, this may be a form of marking territory, but the fact that many different chimps are coming up and leaving stones that kind of seem... I mean, it may be us being anthropocentric about it and seeing something which we do and saying, oh, that must mean that that's something which an animal is doing for the same reason, but...
It sounds a bit abstract for that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a... If you were just going to mark your territory, then...
Well, even marking your territory by using stones is an abstract symbolism.
Yeah, and these a lot of these they find trees that have a split down the middle, and they force the stones into gaps in the cracks of trees.
Wow.
Yeah, look it up on the internet. There's some amazing photos of it. It's. And the researcher Laura Cahill, who has been carrying out this research, admits that there's definitely more research that needs to be done in order to be sure exactly what the reasoning behind this behaviour. But in and of itself, it's...
Oh, how are they ever going to find out?
Well,
how are they ever going to prove it one way or
short of
another?
having a chimp translator.
Yeah.
Well, they're just going to go hang out with the chimps. It's been done before. I'm just concerned that we might, as humans, we might have some competition now. These apes might be making some kind of religion, an ape Jesus. They could be persecuting each other. They could be persecuting other animals because they're not of the same ape religion. I'm getting freaked out about this.
Given the sort of tribal and very individualistic nature of chimpanzee culture, I can totally see that. Them having kind of conflicts about which rock are you leaving at which tree?
hey, they're gonna come for us pagans next. We all know it. So let's keep an eye on this.
Yeah.
Let's keep aware. Keep on the internet and keep looking stuff up.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. Excellent, very strange, bizarre news stories. And we'll have to hear more from you next week, definitely.
Yeah.
So. That'll be great. Okay, so introducing our special guest, Cliff the Talesman Eastabrook. He is a storyteller extraordinaire. He tells stories about Vikings, the occult, fairies, and other stories based on mythology and folklore. You can check him out at his website, www.thetravelingtalesman.co.uk, and he has a new tour coming up soon, which he's going to be plugging, so you can find out about that as well on the website. So, hello, Cliff.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Well, good night.
Good night. Good morning.
Good midnight. We never say that it'll be good midnight to you. Oh, I like that. I'm going to use that now. Yeah, that's going to be.
Definitely start using that.
We're going to start using that. That's awesome. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you in the studio. So that's excellent.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, and thank you for that music from That Is Your Band, Here Be Dragons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that.
It's a Welsh folk rock band that I started playing with about at the turn of the century, I think.
Oh, wow.
First gigged with them.
Which century? That's pretty old. Wow, folk, old folk band still continuing all these years, 100 years. Amazing. So what do you play?
Bass.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, bass guitar.
Yeah,
And there's more coming up later on, isn't there? We've got some more of that. But I'm primarily a storyteller these days. I used to be a full-time musician and toured all over Europe. With Earby Dragons, frequently go out to Italy still, go and have a few days in Italy every now and again, but otherwise we don't play much on this part of the continent in
that's
England.
Too bad.
Occasional gigs in Cardiff, and
they have there's upcoming pagan conference. I'm not sure it's happening. I think in April. It's the Devon. It's the Devon and Cornwall
Pagan
Federation, and
that usually happens in Cornwall somewhere. I'm not sure of the exact. I've never been to it myself.
No, but I have a flyer for it somewhere, and I noticed that they have bands that play there.
Right.
Pagan style bands. So you should check that out.
I know there's also the sort of pagan festival that some friends of mine have spoken of that happens in November, Witch Fest up in which has in the past been in London, but I believe in Croydon, but I believe is being moved to Brighton this year for reasons. So I don't know.
More places for you to gig. Gig away, because that's some good music, and we'll have to include you in our. Sometimes we do a music show, and we have a playlist of pagan, esoteric, folk type music, and so we'll have to include you. Earby Dragons will be added.
Excellent.
Right, so we had decided that you were going to tell us a story, and then we were going to talk about storytelling and stuff after that. So.
Yes.
Right, so why don't you tell us about the story and then the story? You said that the introduction is almost as long as the story.
It's a story that doesn't work without its introduction.
Right.
It's because it's a story that you all know. You all know it. You do. You'll recognise it when it comes along. Because on the whole, I don't do classic stories.
Okay.
You don't get me doing Cinderella and that kind of stuff. I like to find slightly stranger, more unusual stories, things that aren't so well known, fairy tales that haven't been, where people's minds aren't already predisposed by what they've seen on Disney. Older stuff as well a lot of the time. But a couple of years ago I was doing a tour and I'd called it Goblin Schools and Long-Legged Beasties.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And then I started, because the way it works is you come up with the title for the tour, you produce some visuals, and then you sell the tour, and then once you've sold the tour, that's when you do the research and create the show.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So I come up with the idea. I'd phoned round all the venues. I'd got myself a tour booked up now to do the research. Found some horrible things during my research. One, there are no goblins. This whole concept of goblin hordes waiting out in the wilderness to eat the unwary traveller. There's none of that.
You couldn't find any.
Couldn't find it. We won't go down that route for the moment because I'm going the other way. The long-legged beasties.
Oh.
They don't exist either.
Oh no!
There aren't. All the beasties have short legs, and it was quite a struggle. I was looking into nature. There must be something with long legs in nature. There is. Giraffes, not scary. Yeah. So in the end, I ended up with wolves, and of course, werewolves.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I discovered quite a few things. You, as 21st century people, know that you are safe from a man-dog hybrid breaking into your chambers to guzzle your gizzards for a pre-house snack for about 26 days in every month. And it's only the 3 nights of the full moon you have to worry.
That's true. That's a good point.
Complete and utter rubbish.
Oh no, you mean it could happen at any time?
Yeah. That's that whole full moon thing was made up by Victorian writers.
As many of these kind of precepts that we have about mythological creatures
All
are
wrong.
just...
Yeah. When you actually look back into the folk tales, the pre-Victorian folk tale of werewolves, you find that they can change at any time of the month or the week or the day. Tuesday afternoon, 2:30.
Well, yeah, the wolf thing doesn't apply to the Manitou, which is the Native American wolf creature, and that doesn't have anything to do with the moon either. It's like a curse that you can get, and you can get it in your family. Like if your dad has it, you might get it, and they have the bite thing. So if you get bitten by one, then you will get it, but it has nothing to do with the moon at all.
Yeah. Well, the bite doesn't really come into it in any of the folklore that I came across. There are a number of ways you can become a wolf, a werewolf. One is to smear yourself with an ointment, and that brings about the change. Another is to drink the blood of a wolf. The third is to put on the skin of a wolf, and then it becomes your skin,
that
and you
very
become
much
a wolf.
seems to kind of draw on the Norse mythology of, like you had Berserker being bear shirt, being literally putting on the skin of a bear to fight.
Yeah. But it also kind of threads back into tribal cultures where tribes had totems and would dress in the skins of certain animals, and if you look into the African mythology and folklore, where people are of the Ibex tribe, they are Ibex. They are they are the animal that is the totem of their tribe, which can get very confusing in stories when a lion comes along and steals a woman from a tribe, and it's a man from the lion tribe, but it's all very interwoven. Anyway, we'll never get the story if we carry on like this. So you can put on the skin of a wolf, and then there are, of course, your advanced werewolves, ones who've been at werewolf school and got their werewolf levels, and they can change just because they want to. So the upside of this, by the way, of course, is that the silver bullet thing is also total nonsense. Werewolves die as easily as any other mammal. Anything good and sharp will do the trick. So anyway, having laid out this information, because it's necessary for the story, I will now tell you the story. And as I said, it's a story that you will all know. This is a rare situation where I went, I know, there's a classic story that I will do for this set, for Long-Legged Beasties. And then I went, of course, and I looked, and I did my research, and I found a version of the story, and I read it through, and I thought, the ending's rubbish. She gets eaten. That's it. That's the end. That's a terrible ending. I had a look around, found some other variations and versions that are well known, and the endings were still just a bit crap. And I hunted around Angela Carter, fantastic writer who's done a lot of work with folktales. Her version of it, also rubbish. But there was a note, it's a scene note at the back, and I went to the notes at the back of the book, which are storytelling gold, I have to tell you. If you're a storyteller, the notes the more notes the book has, the more you want the book. And at the back, there's notes on this particular folktale, but there's also a whole complete another version of it. A French variant, which is superior in every single way to all the other versions, including the one that's in the main body of the book. Brilliant, that's where I'm starting from. The ending still wasn't great, so I've tweaked the ending.
So we're getting the most superior version of the story.
Well, to my mind. Others may prefer one of the other, but this is, as I say, it's a classic story. You'll all know it. But remember, this is a French variant with a tweaked ending, and it goes like this. Once upon a time, a long time ago, far away from here, there was in France, as it happens, there was a girl, and she lived with her mother. And one day her mother turned to her and she said, "Take this basket with a bottle of warm milk and a hot loaf to your granny through the forest." Yeah, you all know where we are now. Yeah. So the girl, headgear unspecified, set off along the path with the basket over her arm, and she walked out through the village, and she walked until she came to the crossroads, and there she met Bazoo, the werewolf. And he said, "Where you going? What you doing?" And she said, "I'm taking this warm milk and a hot loaf through the forest to my grandmother." He said, "Are you taking the path of needles or the path of pins?" She said, "I'm taking the path of needles." He said, "Right, I'll take the path of pins. We'll see who gets there first." And off he went, fleet foot through the forest. She went along the path of needles, dawdling, picking up needles as she went. He arrived at Granny's house, knocked on the door. "Who is it?" "It's your granddaughter." "It's your granddaughter with a bottle of warm milk and a hot loaf." "Lift up the latch and come in." So he lifted the latch and he went in, and he slew Granny, and he cut her up, and he caught her blood in a bottle, and he put the bottle and some of her meat in the cupboard. Then he put on her clothes and climbed into the bed. Sometime later, the girl, headgear unspecified, arrived at the cottage. She knocked upon the door. A voice came from within. "Who is it? I mean, who is it?" "It's your granddaughter with a hot loaf and some warm milk." This well-insulated basket, obviously. "Lift up the latch and come in." So she lifted the latch and she went inside. And by this time it was dark, and though there was a fire, it was on the same wall as the head of the bed, and so she could not see in the shadows that it was not her grandmother in the bed. And a voice came from the darkness saying, "There's some meat and a bottle of wine in the cupboard. Bring it over and we'll have a feast." And so she went to the cupboard and she took the bottle of blood and the meat of her grandmother, and she took them to the bed, and there they feasted. And once they had feasted, the voice said, "Now, take off your clothes and get into bed." So she did so, and she unbuttoned her coat and took it off, and as she folded it up, she said, "Where shall I put my coat?" "Throw it in the fire. You won't be needing it anymore." So she threw it in the fire. And as she took off her bodice and folded it, she said, "Where shall I put my bodice?" "Throw it in the fire. You won't be needing it anymore." And the same with her dress and her shift. But as she started to roll down her long stockings, the voice came again, for the wolf felt himself filled with a different hunger. "It's all right, you can leave those on for the moment." She climbed into the bed, and as they moved to get comfortable, she felt his rough skin rub against her arm. "Oh, Granny, what hairy skin you've got!" "All the better to keep me warm." As they moved again, his claws touched the back of her hand. "Oh, Granny, what long nails you've got!" "All the better to scratch myself with." As they settled, she said, "Oh, Granny, what broad shoulders you've got!" "All the better for humping wood." "Oh, Granny, what big ears you've got!" "All the better to hear you with, my dear." "What big nostrils you have!" "All the better for huffing snuff." "Oh, Granny, what a long tongue you've got." We'll just gloss over that one, shall we? "Oh, Granny, what big teeth you've got." all the better to eat you with. Oh, Granny, I need to pee. Oh, go in the bed. No, I want to go outside. So the wolf tied a rope of wool around her ankle and let her through the door. Out she went into the cold, dark night. And there in the garden, she quickly undid the wool and tied it around a plum tree. The wolf soon became aware that something wasn't quite right, and he called out, "What are you doing out there? Are you making a load? Are you making a load?" So I told you it was French. But no answer came. And so the change came fully upon him, and totally as a wolf he charged out through the door to chase her through the forest. But she had not run away naked through the trees. She had busied herself finding a good big stick, and as he came through the door, she knocked him senseless upon the floor. It's usually get everybody to cheer at this point. And when he came to, he was back in the bed. And this time, his ankles and his wrists, his arms and his thighs were tied with rope. Ropes came to his chest, and 3 ropes came from different directions to his head, holding him tight so he could not move. The girl, headgear unspecified, was standing at the end of the bed. She climbed onto the bed, climbed along and sat astride him, and her hairs tickled his chest, and he looked up at her and said, "My, what bright eyes you've got. All the better to see you with. Oh, what a sharp mind you have. All the better to trap you with." And she reached behind herself and pulled from her belt a very big knife. "My, what a big knife you've got. All the better to skin you with." And the wolf howled, and the wolf snarled, and the wolf whimpered, and the wolf fell silent. And when she had finished flaying his skin from his body, she had a little cough, and then scraped it and washed it and took it with her. For a girl never knows when she might want to become a wolf.
Great. Woo! That was a great story. Very, very disturbing tale. Some strange episodes in there. I can see how it's French. I really can.
It shows, doesn't it?
It shows.
Yes.
Shows. But I really like it because, first of all, it offers an explanation for why Little Red Riding Hood doesn't notice that it's a wolf rather than her granny, which I think is a point of serious contention in this story. You know. But you know, this makes sense with the firelight and the shadows and you know.
That's actually one of my.
Yeah.
There's got to be some logic.
Because I've been waiting for that for like since I was 3 years old or something. Yes. You know? and you know, in most versions she either gets eaten, or in alternate versions the woodsman saves her.
Yes.
And I like it better that she saves herself.
Nice
yes.
It's a little bit better,
Yeah. Herself.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's the psychology of the story, the deep psychology of the story is very much a women's tale. It's a menach story. It's a coming of age tale, and the encounter with the predatory male, or the encounter with her own internal sexuality, and it just seemed very wrong that she gets swallowed up by it or gets rescued by a man. Both of those don't work.
No.
And the other ending, the original version, the French variant, she runs away and he chases her, and she just gets home in time. Which is also,
so that's like the horror movie version.
Yeah, but it's still a bit weak.
It is, yeah.
So yeah, I think her taking control of that.
That's great. Yeah, I could see this being a new horror movie. This is what needs to happen. So like the woman can get chased for a while, and then she retaliates, and then she kills the predator in some terrible, horrible way. I can really see this taking off.
Cool.
Feminist horror films. Yeah, I'm into that. Okay, well, we're going to take a little break and listen to some more of your music, and then come back and talk about more storytelling stuff. So we have Damien Clark, The River Wherever, Good Ale, the song Good Ale, and the band Yes, the album 90125, and the song is Leave It. So we're going to listen to those, and when we come back you can tell us a little bit about those tracks, and we'll talk more.
Cool.
Bring us in no brown of bread that is made of brain. Bring us in no whipped bread, therein is no gain. Bring us in no bay, for there be many bonnets. Bring us in good ale, for that goes down at one is. Now bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, for a lucid lady's sake. Bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, for a lucid lady's sake. Bring us in good ale. Now bring us in no three pairs, there be sod and clane. Bring us in no mutton, there be off the lane. Bring us in no bacon, that be passing fat. Bring us in good ale, and bring us enough of that. Now bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, for a lucid lady's sake. Bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, for a lucid lady's sake. Bring us in good ale. Bring us in no bossa, there be off the hares. Bring us in no pig's flesh, nail knackers for it. Bring us in no eggs, there be many shells. Bring us in good ale, bring us nothing else. Now bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, for a lucid lady's sake. Bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, bring us in good ale, for a lucid lady's sake. Bring us in good ale.
sense of measure, no illusions as we take refuge in young man's pleasure, breaking down the dreams we make real.
One down, one to go, another town, one more show. Downtown, you're giving away, but you never came back. No phone, take your place, you know what I mean. We have the same intrigue in the Carter case.
Late into the night live from the heart of Exeter, Phonic FM.
Good midnight. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Alison Rockbrand, and you are listening to Exe Files Paranormal Radio on Phonic FM. It is the witching hour. I'm here with my co-host, Jonathan Diamond. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, and welcome to the stranger side of radio.
We are here this evening without Richard Freeman, who is in Tasmania hunting for a leopard, did you say?
Tasmanian tiger.
Tasmanian
which
tiger.
Isn't actually a tiger at all, because they don't have mammals over there. It's some sort of marsupial thing, but it's got stripes, so they call it a tiger.
He is at this moment eating canned soup in a tent somewhere, and we hope he doesn't get eaten. We are here with our special guest, Cliff, the Talesman, Eastabrook. Hello, Cliff.
Hello, Alison.
And he's just been telling us a fascinating rendition of Little Red Riding Hood, which is how we normally call it, but his version is called The Girl Headgear Unspecified, and we have just been listening to a very chilling and disturbing version of that, so thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
You have just been listening to some music which Cliff has brought into the studio, and that was Damien Clark, The River Wherever, and this song called Good Ale, which definitely made me feel like drinking ale. And of course, Yes, and Leave It. So why those songs, Cliff?
Well, Damien, partly because next week I'm doing some recording with him on his next album. One of my previous jobs was as a sound engineer, and I still get to do a little bit of it every now and again. And so we're recording some more songs. Well, we're down to the mix downs on what will be his next album, and I used to play with Damien in Press Gang and toured all over Europe together. And it's sort of really nice to get back together again and do a bit of work. But he's getting around all over the country and goes off to Germany and tours as well, playing his we heard him with his hurdy-gurdy there, but he also plays beautiful hammered dulcimer and sings and does amazing artwork, and you can see his exhibitions and him out with his gurdy and his dulcimer at the exhibitions where he's showing off his artwork. So look out for him, Damien Clark.
Yeah, I really like that. It sounded really good.
Yes. That was the 80s incarnation of what most of you probably know as a 70s prog rock band, who I think are still going, though. They lost their main man. Chris Squire died last year, which is a big blow for the bass community. Certainly massive influence on me and my playing. The best bass guitarist that ever lived, as far as I'm concerned. And that was Leave It, which I kind of for me it's the nearest thing you get to a gateway number for people who aren't into Yes to get something that opens the door for them to. I would have loved to have played you The Gates of Delirium off Relayer, but it's 15 minutes long.
Yeah, it's a little bit too long.
Yeah. But if you get a chance, listen to it, because they do something more with music than 3-minute pop songs.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about why storytelling. So why are you a storyteller? You said you used to be a musician, a full-time musician.
Still am a musician, but I used to be a full-time musician. Why storytelling? I've been on and off stage and backstage and in the tech box, anything to do with theatre since I was 13. Kind of sidetracked into rock and roll for many years, and then I kind of around the point that I started being a professional musician and touring was also around the point that I started going out and telling stories almost as an antidote to sound checks and wires and big boxes and PA systems, and being able to go out and perform without having to do sound checks or sleep in a van with a load of other smelly musicians. Love you dearly, guys, but you know what it's like. And just being able to turn out and perform in a room, any room, with nothing, whether there's a chair or not, or you just, all you need is yourself and your voice, and obviously something in your memory to speak. And I kind of started doing it as I was at that point. I was playing with a fairly prog folk band. And in the days before digital technology was really everywhere, all the synths and all the guitar effects all needed manually resetting between each number. So we'd finish a number and the guitarist and the keyboardist would start fiddling about, and it could take them up to about 5 minutes of fiddling around to get everything set for the next song. And it was a choice of dead air or me talking. So I started reciting poems and doing long rambling introductions, and you know, with a lot of folk songs. Actually, the songs are moment. Songs are very much about the emotions, and they tend not to be narrative, but they're frequently an excerpt, the big emotional moment from a story. And then, so for the introduction, you can do the story, you can tell the story up to the point where the song starts. And that was very much kind of what I was doing there. And I thought, I like this talking to the audience and interacting. And so I started, I wanted to do more of it. And that's what brought me into storytelling. It's kind of a instant one-person theatre that you can do without sets. And of course now of course when I go out on tour, I take stuff and hang it up. And
so you're sleeping in a van with a bunch of smelly storytellers.
Well, one. Generally I manage to avoid sleeping in the van. Every now and again it happens.
Sounds great. Well, tell us about some strange things that have happened in your career as a storyteller. Certainly you've told some stories to some weird people or had some weird reactions. Actually,
it's surprising how little that... The weird thing that does... The thing that could be considered weird is every now and again you find yourself... Not so much with the touring shows where it's a show and I've got a set and a theme and so forth, but I do a lot of kind of festival gigs and occasional parties and one-off events and stuff. And those are the kind of things where I'll find myself, I've got an idea of what I'm going to tell, and maybe there's been somebody else is on before me playing a song, singing a song, and I thought, I know what I'm going to follow this with. And they finish, I'm introduced, I walk out, I start speaking, and as I start speaking I realise I'm not telling the story that I was going to tell.
Oh, no.
I'm telling a completely different story. Really? And that's a kind of because you've got to shake yourself a bit. But you go with it and you tell the story that you started telling, and you get to the end of it, and every single time that happens somebody will come up afterwards and says, I really needed to hear that story.
Really? Wow.
It's that thing.
That
stories have messages in them. They're not just fairy tales. They are the reason that they survived for so long and were passed on for so long, and why you'll find the same stories in lots and lots of different cultures is because they are the ones that survive are psychological maps.
That almost sounds to me like the idea of story being an entity that needs to make itself... there's a time that a story needs to make itself known, and it will make itself known in whatever way it can. Usually through kind of the mouthpiece of a storyteller telling a story. And but that story has that kind of desire to be...
And if they don't get told, then that's when you get problems. And this is... ghosts. I don't tell ghost stories. I shy away from them, basically because there are only 2 ghost stories. Ghost story 1 goes, we saw a ghost. Then we heard somebody had died. Ghost story 2, somebody died. Now there's a ghost. It's really hard to find a ghost story with a good plot, but the ones with the plots, almost without fail, the solution to the ghost problem is that somebody asks the ghost what it wants, and the ghost tells them the story of its death, which is in folk tales, ghosts telling the story of their death. Usually it's they went away from home, they made their fortune, they returned and were unrecognised by their family, who then did them in order to get their gold, but then discovered who they were after they'd killed them. Discovered the ring that was in their pocket or whatever, and have buried the gold in the garden. And the person who listens to the story lays the ghost, and once it's told its story, it can go to its grave properly or move on to the next part, and they get the gold. And it's that thing that's untold stories are the cause of always the cause of problems, and they're the reason for ghosts. Ghosts hang around because they've got a story that they want to tell.
What you're saying was reminding me a little bit of The Woman in Black, Susan Hill, and I think one of the reasons why this story is actually really scary is because it doesn't follow this traditional plot. It does, but it doesn't. And it's also, I think, in ghost stories, it's like the nature of the ghost that's creepy. Like in The Ring, where the ghost comes out of the TV and it like attacks people, like it's a ghost at a TV, but then it comes out. So something which isn't real but then becomes real. And also just like in The Ring, the ghost is like this creepy backwards, like really creepy. Like it looks.
That's kind of very much part of that.
It looks scary.
I guess coming out of that Japanese thing of everything being animate and sort of everyday objects being animate with sort of kind of spirits of their own. Exactly.
But also in like The Woman in Black, who the ghost, even though they try to resolve the problem by like finding her dead child in mud or whatever, it doesn't solve the problem. So she's still she's really, really vengeful. And she imparts this curse onto people that see her, and children die and stuff. So it has a real world effect. So she shows up, and all of a sudden the children start to die, and they commit suicide. Basically, they drink poison, or they walk into the sea, and so then I mean, so for me, I think this is one of the reasons why this type of story is scary, because the ghost is a real physical presence that can cause death. Other people to die, and that can't be exorcised, or somehow there is no solution to the ghost problem.
That's a modern horror twist, though, isn't it? It's the unending one. You don't get any of that in the old folk tales. They always resolve.
Well, it's one of my favourite sort of bits of folk music and sort of folk stories, which is, I guess, a ghost sort of resolving a situation, is The Cruel Sister. Do you know the...
I do, yes.
That two sisters, both in love with the same guy. The two sisters go out for a walk. One of them pushes the other one into the river and she drowns. And then, for some reason, which is one of these kind of folk devices that never really explains why, a harp player comes wandering along the riverbank
and makes a harp out of her.
Yes, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why not?
It's just like,
cool.
What point did someone find a corpse and go, good materials for an instrument there? but the fact that story ends with the harp playing the story of
what her sister did to her. Yes.
But it's the kind of thing you'd only do if you happen to be living in a folk song.
That'd be really cool though for a performance. Like you're telling the story and you're playing this harp, and then at the end you're like, and this is the harp I made out of her bones. Now that would be creepy. But your story also reminded me of Saint Roche or Saint Roch, and this is a story where I weirdly looked up a while ago. He's the patron saint of dogs, and his story is that what happened is exactly what you're saying. He went out into the desert to do some kind of saintly stuff. He was gone from his hometown, and then he came back, and he was so physically changed that they didn't recognize him. Nobody recognized him, and they thought he was was an imposter of himself. So they locked him up in prison, and he died in prison 5 years later.
No.
Yeah, seriously. So it actually happens. It actually used to happen. Yeah. It's a very strange story, but it is a true story, apparently, in like the 13th century or something. So Saint Roche, R-O-C-H, you can check him out. Check him out, because it's a real story. I thought it was very strange, but he is the patron saint of dogs, as he was. He caught the plague and went out into the desert. Sometimes it's the woods, somewhere away from the town, to die. And a dog came and fed him every day, and he got better, and he got cured from the plague. He recovered, and he went on to become like a kind of nurse and nurse people who had the plague. And then he went back to his hometown, and then they were like, "Who are you?" And he was like, "I'm Roche." And they were like, "No, you're not. You're an imposter." So they locked him up, and he died in prison like 5 years later. So it's a pretty terrible story.
That is.
I bet you his ghost is haunting someone right now. But thank you very much. It's been fascinating having you on the show.
Well, we're out of time.
Yeah, it goes by very quick. Just before we go, tell us about your current tour and so on.
So you'll have to go to the website to get all the dates, but it kicks off in April. And the tour is The Nectar of the Gods, and it's all about mythological brewings and fantastical beers and the trouble that the gods have making them or drinking them, because they always seem to have trouble with it one way or another, finding the ingredients and things, and it all ties back into our earliest days, and there's a lot of evidence coming out at the moment, and archaeologists starting to suggest that the move to agriculture was not brought about by a desire for more food, but because we discovered beer.
Yeah, well, I can well believe that. So go to the website. It is www.thetravelingtalesman.co.uk, and the tour is The Nectar of the Gods. There is a tour date, I'm looking here, in Bristol, in May 11th in Bristol, that I think is the closest to us. So do check that out.
And 14th of May, the London Inn in Morchard Bishop is actually the closest to Exeter. Okay, great. So up through Crediton, and a little bit further on, and you turn right and you come to Morchard Bishop.
Great. Otherwise, down to Bristol on the 11th.
Bristol on the 11th, which would be good. It's a fairly new venue for me, and more people there would be great.
Well, great. We're definitely going to check that out, and I encourage everyone to do so as well. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been fantastic.
A total pleasure.
Definitely have to have you back. We're going to play one more song for you. We have Press Gang. This is also one of your groups?
Yeah, this was my main band.
Okay, great.
For many years. We toured all over Europe together. And this was we split up, and then we it was during the 90s, and then we split up, but we reformed again, and made this album, Outlandish.
Great. Well, we're going to have a listen. This is Press Gang, Outlandish, and The Nobleman's Wedding. We'll be back next week with more from me, Alison Rockbrand, and my co-host Jonathan Diamond. Until then, farewell.
Goodbye.
All that were there will remember one song. The first man to sing was the bride's former lover. The song that he sung was a days long gone. How can you eat at another man's table? How can you drink from another man's wine? How can you lie at another man's pillow? You once were a true love of mine. Now the bride, she was seated at the head of the table. Hearing these words she remembered so well. Verse after verse, she could bear it no longer. Down at the foot of the table she fell. Oh my liege, hear my plea. The first and the last this favour shall be. Tonight I must lie in the arms of my mother. Tomorrow night I will lie with thee. Sighing, sobbing, she went from the table. Sighing and sobbing, she went to her room. Early next day, her husband awoke. He went to her room and he found that she had